Orochimaru's Headed Serpent. That's one of his most powerful jutsus. It's also very mysterious and imbued in a lot of mythology. So in this video, let's talk everything about the Headed Serpent, how powerful it was, why Orochimaru didn't use it more often, its mythological inspirations, and also a few things that are quite weird and don't make that much sense. Or maybe they even do, just not in the way you think. Orochimaru only uses this jutsu one time in his fight against Itachi, if you can even call that a fight. But even though it's only used once, and it's not very effective in the fight in question, it is still a very good looking jutsu. The 8 massive white snakes erupting out of Sasuke make for a very nice visual in that 2-page spread with a Susanoo readying itself for the clash. The database has some very interesting information about this jutsu, and it's probably the best thing we have to go for. After all, this jutsu is not really used that often, and we don't have much of an explanation for it in the manga. The art of Headed Serpent is said to be Orochimaru's greatest and strongest snake-related technique. It is said that by using the quote-unquote power of reincarnation possessed by the white snake as an intermediary, because if you can remember, the theme about white snakes is that they're reborn. Remember in the flashback when Orochimaru found a white snake's skin as he was visiting his parents' graves? That guides a lot of his personality and jutsus and everything he wishes to learn. And Hiruzen explains that white snakes are extremely rare and they do mean reincarnation, and so Orochimaru is channeling that power. The power he acquired himself, the power to essentially never die. The guy is immortal. And he channels all that power into this next transformation, the 8-headed serpent. The serpent is massive, it tramples the Uchiha hideout, and it is said to be even larger than Manda, which I kinda disagree. If you take a look at Manda's size, and then at the 8-headed serpent, it's certainly smaller, at least when you pick just one of the heads. Maybe if you talk about the entire body of the 8-headed serpent, then yeah, it may be bigger than Manda, heavier, but I still think Manda's bigger anyways. It is even said that this technique transcends the snake and becomes a dragon, or a dragon god, which is also something we see when Kabuto learns Sage Mode. He becomes a dragon. In Japanese folklore, dragons are essentially evolutions of snakes. They don't have arms, they are those elongated forms that can fly and everything. It's not like an European dragon, for example. And that's a jutsu Orochimaru was probably waiting for a decent amount of time to use. He was taken down by Sasuke, who absorbed Orochimaru, essentially taking Orochimaru as his prisoner and using his powers for himself, which was probably very much a humiliating situation for Orochimaru. That's what he wanted to do with Sasuke's body, use it for him, but instead Sasuke did the reverse card. But when Sasuke spends his chakra completely, in the fight against Itachi, Orochimaru can break out of it. Sasuke can no longer contain Orochimaru, and he emerges from the curse mark, which I guess is a little bit of setup for eventually Orochimaru being brought back through Anko's curse mark, even though that thing in the arc doesn't make sense because Orochimaru was not absorbed by Anko to begin with. It makes sense for Orochimaru to emerge out of Sasuke in that situation because Sasuke had literally absorbed Orochimaru's body, but Anko, no, she just had a curse mark. And Orochimaru returns in nigh full power anyways, and he had a body there, something he wasn't supposed to have if the only thing Anko had was a curse mark Horcrux. Regardless of that, he is able to use the 8-headed serpent, which is said to be Orochimaru's most powerful snake and an S-rank jutsu. Unfortunately for him, he is just absolutely destroyed by Itachi and his Susanoo. Which, to be fair, it was Itachi with his Susanoo, the Totsuka blade, and the Yaramir, not exactly something easy to fight against. And yeah, the fight may last less than a chapter because, well, Itachi just kinda seals Orochimaru with a Totsuka blade. Orochimaru still attacks the Susanoo, and he kinda forces Itachi to spend some efforts into defeating him, which wasn't something he managed to do the first time he tried to get Itachi's body, because that time was far more humiliating. Itachi put Orochimaru in a genjutsu with those, well, rods piercing Orochimaru all over the body, cut one of Orochimaru's hands and said, "Oh, you're not even worth killing." And that was when Itachi was 13 years old. And here at least, Orochimaru forced Itachi to use his Susanoo and his 2 extremely powerful OP weapons. He forced Itachi to raise the Yaramir, the mirror that can block anything, to block the 8-headed serpent attacks, He wrapped the serpent around the Susanoo, trying to pin it down, and even after Itachi cuts pretty much every single head out of the 8-headed serpent, Orochimaru was still pretty confident and not very much worried about the situation. So losing all those heads that the Susanoo cut was not a major deal for Orochimaru. The problem was that Itachi was wielding the Totsuka blade, which Orochimaru wasn't counting on. And that's what sealed Orochimaru's destiny, quite literally. Now, of course, Itachi's entire plan was to force Sasuke into his limit so that Orochimaru would emerge, and so Itachi could seal Orochimaru into the Totsuka blade and rid Sasuke of that burden. But once the fight between Itachi and Orochimaru starts, it's game on, right? Itachi's not gonna hold back against Orochimaru. He was surely holding back against Sasuke, but not here. And the fact that Orochimaru was only sealed after the Susanoo had cut several of the serpent's heads is very strange and interesting. It implies that the Totsuka blade is not as powerful as some people think. Yes, it can seal stuff, but it has to touch the actual person. Because if the Totsuka blade could just seal Orochimaru by touching the snake at all, Itachi could have just sealed him when he cut the first head. But no, Itachi had to wait for Orochimaru to emerge out of the snake's mouth, and so he could thrust the Totsuka blade at Orochimaru, drag him into it, and seal him completely. Which is, I guess, a pretty interesting limitation for the Totsuka blade. You wouldn't be able to seal somebody by just piercing their Susanoo. You have to actually hit the person, for instance. If you don't hit the real body of your targets, you can't drag him into it. So if there was this hypothetical Susanoo battle between Itachi and somebody else, even if he used the Totsuka blade, it would just be like a regular Susanoo sword, perhaps more powerful, but it wouldn't have the sealing capabilities unless you managed to break the enemy Susanoo. And it's kind of the same thing here with Orochimaru's snake. If Orochimaru hadn't shown his body, then it's very likely he could have dragged the fight longer at least, and we know Itachi didn't have much chakra at that point, and he was literally blind. He was no longer showing the Mangekyo Sharingan on his face. His eyes had gone out light. And Itachi seems almost relieved when Orochimaru emerges saying, "Oh, you finally came out." So Orochimaru was pretty much doomed because of his arrogance. He wanted to go out there, mock Itachi, say, "Oh, you're not gonna be able to beat me, Itachi." Then he hits Orochimaru with a Totsuka blade and Orochimaru's like, "Huh, what a pathetic strike. This can't hurt me." And then he realizes it's the Totsuka blade, a blade Orochimaru had been looking for a long time, and that manages to seal Orochimaru alongside the 8-headed serpent and also Sasuke's curse mark, which I don't like. Sasuke should have kept the curse mark. I made a video about that. And then you may say, well, sure, it's an S-rank jutsu, but it got dealt with rather easily by Itachi. Then again, as I said, Totsuka blade, Susanoo, Yaramir, not easy to deal with. Itachi is also an extremely difficult opponent for you to deal with. But the reason why the 8-headed serpent was slain like that is actually very interesting if you look from a more out-of-universe perspective in the mythology Kishimoto used to inspire this scene. Because in Shinto, the 8-headed serpent is called Yamata no Orochi, a gigantic 8-headed serpent, just like Orochimaru's. And the story of Yamata no Orochi is a classic example of a hero slaying the monster myth. The hero in question is a god called Susanoo, the god of storms. After being exiled from heaven, he encounters a family forced to sacrifice their daughter to the serpent each year. They had several daughters, okay? It wasn't just one daughter being sacrificed all over, because that wouldn't make much sense, right? The serpent was a demonic creature, and when they were about to sacrifice their final daughter, Susanoo, the god of storms, devises a plan to get the serpent drunk on sake and then slays it. That sounds quite familiar, does it not? I mean, yeah, it's literally what happens in the Naruto series. Itachi Susanoo, which is based off Susanoo, the god of storms in Shinto, slays the 8-headed serpent. And the Totsuka blade seals the target and puts him into this state of stupor and drunkenness for eternity. Just like in Shinto mythology, Susanoo made the snake drunk before he killed it. Well, in Itachi's case, it's like the opposite. He kills it first or seals it, and then it's gonna be drunk forever. But you can clearly see the inspiration here, and it's very interesting. But there are also some very weird things about the 8-headed serpent in universe. So let's talk about them. The first one is that if this is Orochimaru's strongest technique, why didn't he use it more often? Why did he even need Manda in the first place? Because Manda was a very unruly summon that wanted to kill Orochimaru. The 8-headed serpent is essentially Orochimaru himself transformed into that form, so that's very convenient for him, and it just so happens to be his strongest physical form. Also, don't forget that Orochimaru's arms were still sealed when Orochimaru seals the 8-headed serpent, so it's a jutsu he can use while his arms are deactivated. So he could have used that in the Search for Tsunade arc, he could have used that against the Four Tails, and, most importantly, he could have used that against Sasuke when Sasuke betrays Orochimaru and eventually absorbs him. Yes, we see Orochimaru's quote-unquote true form, which is a snake-like form as well, and it's pretty big, but not nearly as big as the 8-headed serpent and not nearly as powerful. Sasuke didn't have much of a problem at all dealing with Orochimaru. The only thing that gave Sasuke a little bit of an issue was the gaseous poison that came out of Orochimaru's blood that made Sasuke tremble a bit, which allowed Orochimaru to initiate the ritual to absorb Sasuke's body, but then Sasuke just reversed that anyways. But like, why not go all out? Why not use the 8-headed serpent? Was Orochimaru too weak, and so he couldn't use it because his body was expiring? Well, perhaps, and that's the interesting thing. Orochimaru sort of discards his body, because that version of Orochimaru we see against Sasuke of that white snake with a creepy head is Orochimaru's real body after all the experiments he's done, and he needs to inhabit somebody else to look human and to survive for a longer period of time and eventually acquire immortality. So because we literally see that form of Orochimaru leaving his previous body, it means that Orochimaru doesn't have access to jutsus he would have otherwise. Jutsus that require a body for him to use. Now he's only that snake form. And so it's likely that Orochimaru would need a body to use the 8-headed serpent, because he has Sasuke's body when he used it against Itachi. He literally comes out of Sasuke and still uses Sasuke's body to attack the Susanoo while Orochimaru transforms into the 8-headed serpent. They essentially fuse together into that massive thing. It's only after Itachi seals the 8-headed serpent that Sasuke is freed from it, and if Itachi hadn't done that, it's very likely Orochimaru would have just taken over Sasuke's body. So he couldn't use that against Sasuke because his body was too frail, and then he just discards it anyway. But what about before, like in the fight against the Four Tails, for example? Was it because his body was frail as well and starting to reject Orochimaru? Probably. We see that the fight ends because Orochimaru has to retreat. His body is failing him. And so it's likely that the 8-headed serpent wouldn't work either. In the fight against Hiruzen at the Chunin exams, Orochimaru was using the Edo Tensei jutsu, which I guess it's far more effective than the 8-headed serpent, especially with the Edo Tenseis he had in plan. Also because of the barrier the Sound 4 created, that didn't really give Orochimaru too much room, and we see that that thing is massive. The 8-headed serpent seems bigger than the barrier the Sound 4 creates. I mean, I guess it could maybe fit in there, but it would be very crammed. And in the fight against Jiraiya and Tsunade in the Search for Tsunade arc, that was a good chance for Orochimaru to use the 8-headed serpent, I guess. But obviously we needed him to summon Manda to complete the 3-way deadlock. That was what the fight was supposed to be. Also, we know Orochimaru's body was starting to fail him at that point already, because in the next arc, in the Sasuke retrieval, he literally has to swap bodies. And he had just gotten his arms sealed by the Reaper Death Shield, so he was probably not feeling so good about it, which is obvious. That's why he was going after Tsunade in the first place, to heal his arms. So maybe that was a jutsu he couldn't use if his body was not in peak condition. And because Sasuke's body was in peak condition fighting against Itachi, even though he was out of chakra at that point, it is still a perfectly good body that's not rejecting Orochimaru or anything like it. Meaning Orochimaru can use his most powerful snake form. But then there's another strange thing. Where did Orochimaru get all that chakra? Because I have to assume transforming his entire body into that massive 8-headed serpent would require a lot of it. And Sasuke was completely out of chakra. That's the reason why Orochimaru managed to emerge. Well, it's because Orochimaru wasn't using Sasuke's chakra to use the jutsu. He was using his own chakra. After all, Sasuke absorbed Orochimaru's body, and with that, he also absorbed Orochimaru's chakra. That's why Sasuke was able to use Orochimaru's snakes, Orochimaru's skin chain substitution, and other Orochimaru's jutsus, as well as getting a better healing factor, for example. It's because Orochimaru's chakra lived inside of him. It wasn't just his body. Now, the mechanics are not certain here. Did Sasuke use Orochimaru's own chakra when using the white snakes and other Orochimaru's jutsus, or was he using those jutsus with his chakra and he was only able to use the jutsus because Orochimaru was inside of him, but Orochimaru's chakra itself wasn't performing the jutsus? Well, it's implied that Sasuke was using his own chakra to create those jutsus. Now, most of the white snakes weren't too chakra demanding, I have to assume. Sasuke creating them to block attacks like Data's explosions or even the kunais during the Itachi fights was not a terribly chakra consuming thing. So that's not something Sasuke would have really felt. And oh my god, I'm running out of chakra, I have to conserve it, I can't use white snakes anymore. But when it comes to this king chain substitution that he uses to escape Itachi's Amaterasu, that one really consumes a lot of chakra, because it's after that jutsu that Sasuke's like, yeah, I'm tapped out, I can only use Kirin now, but that's because I don't have to use a lot of chakra to begin with. I only have to ignite a little Chidori to tame the lightning, and, well, nature will do the rest, and shoot that dragon thing, Kirin, out of the sky. So, because of that, it's likely that even though Sasuke had Orochimaru absorbed, he didn't have access to Orochimaru's chakra literally. He couldn't spend it for his own jutsus. He could use Orochimaru's abilities because he had Orochimaru's body, but because Sasuke was not the original user of the body transfer jutsu, he just kinda universe carded it, he didn't have complete access to Orochimaru's body. Also, he wasn't walking around with Orochimaru's body like Orochimaru would have done with Sasuke's body, which then would allow Orochimaru access to Sasuke's abilities and chakra. No, Sasuke had Orochimaru absorbed inside of him. With chakra and all, he had access to the abilities, he didn't have access to Orochimaru's chakra, and when Sasuke ran out of chakra and could no longer suppress Orochimaru's chakra living inside of him, that's when Orochimaru emerges, and he has chakra to use, so he uses his most powerful ability out of the gate, the 8-Headed Serpent, because, let's face it, he is going to fight against Itachi, a guy that completely humiliated him in the past, so Itachi has to go all out from the get-go. Now, if you want to find out why Manda makes no sense, watch that video on your screen right now. It's a very interesting one, kind of like this one too. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you ring notifications so you always get the videos. Those are very important things, they take 5 seconds and really help me out, so please do them right now. And thank you so much for watching.